All right, hello everybody. Thank you very much for joining me today. My name is Emanuela. I'm part of the Digital Accessibility team at Barclays. Thank you. And today I'm going to talk about some of the new payment solutions that we are developing or we've recently launched at Barclays, and some of the accessibility challenges that come with them, which are quite unique. So just a very brief introduction about myself. I joined Barclays in June last year, so I'm still relatively new to the company. But I've been working as an accessibility consultant for over 10 years in the UK and in Australia. So I'm really, really passionate about digital inclusion. And being Italian, I'm also really passionate about ice cream. So I would say those are my two equal biggest passion. And I'm really proud of being working for Barclays right now. And that's because one of Barclays' ambitions is to become the most accessible and inclusive FTSE company for our customers and clients. I mean, for someone who is passionate about inclusion and who has been working as an accessibility consultant for many years, working for companies whose ambition is to become the most inclusive FTSE 100 is great. It's really, really good. And Barclays does that not only because it makes commercial sense. I think we all agree that if our products are accessible to everybody, we can have more customers, and also if our systems are accessible for our colleagues, it means we can hire and retain a wider range of talents. But most importantly, Barclays does it because it's the right thing to do. So there is this culture in Barclays where we recognize the importance of making sure that all our products are accessible, including our payment solutions. And when I heard that the topic of today's event was about non-screen based interaction, I immediately thought of payments. This is because what we've seen the past few years, in the past few months, is that payment solutions are definitely becoming less and less interaction-based solutions. So we're definitely seeing a trend in the payment industry. And when I talk about payments, I think mainly of three areas. So I think of online payments. So if you buy something using an app or a website, you have to go through a payment process. I think of in-store payments. So if you want to buy something in a store, you have to pay in the store. But also a third key area around payments is authentication. Very often, if you want to pay for something, you have to be able to prove who you are, yourself. You have to be able to authenticate yourself. So let's start talking about online payments. What we used to do, and what we still have to do in some cases when we want to buy something using a website or an app, is we have to go through a payment process where we are asked to enter some information, such as our name, credit card number, expiry date, security code, and so on. So this involves clearly quite a lot of typing, quite a lot of the manual entry of information. Luckily, we are moving away from having to enter all that information in a couple of different ways. So very often now when you use a mobile website or an app, you have the option to use the camera in your device to scan the credit card. So you don't have to enter the information anymore. You just have to check that the information is being entered for you is correct. And also, very often now, we can ask the app to actually store the information. So we enter the credit card information once, and then the next time we use the same app, we don't have to enter them anymore. So all of these new solutions remove that need for all of that manual information entry, which is really, really good. But actually, now, more and more solutions are getting rid completely of the interaction with the screen. What happens now is that customers can use their voice and give voice command to devices like their iPhone if they're using Siri or Alexa, for example. I don't know if any of you is a Barclays customer. I'm not going to ask, I don't want to know. And I don't know if any of you who may be a Barclays customer has had a chance to use a solution called Siri Payment, which we launched last year. And actually, AbilityNet helped us test it. Thank you very much. So this solution allowed our customers to transfer money to their contacts just talking to Siri. So a typical interaction would have been, hey Siri, pay John £5 for coffee. Siri would confirm the information for you, you would authenticate yourself using your Finger ID, and the payment was made. No need to interact with your iPhone at all, other than giving voice commands. Fortunately, Siri Payment is not working right now, so I can demo it to you. It got broken with one of the recent iOS updates. It's really unfortunate. But hopefully it will be working soon again. And I know the other banks and companies are coming up with similar solutions. For example, I know that Capital One has built a skill for Alexa where the customers can use Alexa to make payments or transfer money and so on by simply using their voice. So we're definitely seeing this trend in online payments. What about in-store payments? Well, the way we used to make payments in store, and we still have to do it sometimes, is, unless you're paying cash, clearly. If you want to pay with your credit card, we used to have to insert the credit card in the card machine reader, type in our PIN, and then the payment was made. So there are two main steps there. You have to enter your card the right way. You have to remember your PIN and being able to enter your PIN. Now, we got rid of all of these thanks to contactless payments. So now you can just tap your credit card or your iPhone if you have Apple Pay, or, there's my sales pitch, I'm wearing Barclays BPay. So this is a bracelet, there is a SIM in the bracelet, have an app, and I top up the SIM card using the app with as much money as I want, and then when I'm in a shop, in a train station, wherever they accept a contactless payment, I just touch the bracelet, instead of having to look for my credit card from my mobile. So again, we're eliminating some of those steps that in-store payments involved. How can we do even better? At Barclays, we're now piloting a new solution called Dine and Dash. I don't know if you heard of it. But basically with this solution, let's imagine you're going to a restaurant and the restaurant is supporting this payment solution. You have your Dine and Dash app with your credit card information saved in it. So you go into the restaurant, you sit down at the restaurant, you just check in on the app, so the app knows which restaurant you're in and which table you're sitting at. You dine, and when you're done, you stand up and leave. You don't even have to think about paying. You don't even need to worry about paying. Once you leave the store, the app detects you have left the venue and makes the payment for you. And notifies the restaurant so you don't have people running after you. A bit awkward. So again, this removes completely any need of interacting with any kind of card machine reader or any kind of screen interaction, which is great. Finally, what about authentication? I think we all agree that authentication used to be a real pain in the neck. You often had to remember passwords. You often had to answer security questions that you chose many months earlier, and there's no way you're going to remember the answer. Or if you want to log into your online banking, for example, Barclays, we have that little, it looks like a calculator, it's PIN Sentry, the little machine where you have to enter your card, enter your PIN, that generates a unique code, and you have to enter the code in the online app. So again, a lot of steps you have to go through. Luckily, again, we're moving away from all of that. For example, now you can authenticate yourself with the Finger ID, as I mentioned before. If you use when it will be working again. If you use Siri payments, you can just touch with your finger, you can authenticate yourself. And again, more and more similar solutions are coming up. So for example, now if you're a Barclays customer, you can identify yourself using your voice. So you call the bank and you just talk, and they recognize your voice. And more apps now, they're starting using facial ID as well. So instead of using your finger, you can use your face. Much, much easier. Much easier for everybody, but especially for many, many people who have a permanent, temporary, or situational impairment. Clearly, not having to type in a lot of details as we had to helps people with mobility impairment who may struggle to type in, helps people with vision impairment, because unless forms are built with accessibility in mind, which unfortunately is not always the case, they may be difficult to fill in for someone who is blind. And it even helps people, for example, with dyslexia, who may struggle to enter digits or letters in the correct order. And if we think of the in-store payment experience, not having to actually physically enter a credit card or even just use a credit card, it means you don't have to look for your credit card in your wallet, in your pocket, in your bag. Again, really, really good benefit for people with mobility or vision impairment. And also for people with vision impairment, not having to actually insert the card and find out which is the right way to insert the card, which may seem obvious to us, but may not be for everybody. And often those card machine reader may not be accessible. So again, it may be difficult for someone with mobility or vision impairment to enter their PIN using those card machines. And not having to remember passwords or secret answers to validate, to authenticate yourself clearly is particularly beneficial for some people with memory impairments who cannot possibly remember information like that. And as I mentioned earlier already, some people really struggle to spell words. So not having to enter the secret answer or the password really helps. So it's really good to see that all these new solutions that are coming out now have these great accessibility benefits. However, with these great accessibility benefits, we also have unique accessibility challenges that we never had to face before. For example, and this is not an exhaustive list, but for example, people who are deaf, they won't be able to make payments using Siri or Alexa. Also, people who are non-verbal won't be able to use voice activation devices. But also people like myself, who you may have guessed, I'm not an English native speaker, or also people with speech impairments. We're probably not, the voice-activated devices are getting better and better, but we're not probably there yet. So, I'm still struggling to use these devices, and many people with speech impairments will also struggle. And in general, because these are quite recent, are quite innovative solutions, everybody may struggle to understand how to interact with voice-activated devices. What are the right commands? What are the right answers to give? What can I ask? Also, some people, for example, this is a bit of a generalization, but older users and late adopters may simply not want to use the new solutions, may actually like to go into the branch and do everything they want to do, speaking to a person instead of using these new devices, or may not have access to the latest smartphones or smart speaker. And finally, at Barclays, we really care about vulnerable customers. We actually have a team that looks after our vulnerable customers. And the fact that these new payment solutions are removing the friction that used to be when we had to make payments in the past. It's great for a lot of customers, but it may be a problem for our vulnerable customers, because making it so much easier to make payments means that these customers may end up spending more money than they can afford or they want to spend. So how can we address all of these new and unique challenges? I don't know. That's a short answer. But even though these challenges are new and unique, I think that we simply have to apply exactly the same principles that we have always applied when talking about and thinking about accessibility. So I think a key aspect of accessibility is providing alternatives. I mean, if you have ever attended another talk about accessibility, I think one of the most common examples that people give when talking about accessibility is if you have an image on a website, you need to provide an alternative text or description. If you have a video with audio, you need to provide caption. It's exactly the same principle. We want to provide alternatives. So we don't want to shut all our branches, because if people want to go into a branch to speak with a person, they should be able to do so. If someone is not able to use a voice-activated device, they should still be able to fill in a form and make payments that way, and so on. And thinking more specifically about the voice-activated devices, clearly people building skills for these devices really have to think about accommodating as many different commands and responses as possible, and also as many accents and different ways of speaking, and it's slowly getting better. And another key principle of accessibility has always been how to help users recover from errors, or even prevent users from making errors. And again, the same applies to these voice-activated devices. So how can they guide users so that they don't get stuck at any point? If someone gives an answer that is not expected, or a command that is not understood, how can you actually help them go through the process smoothly? And for our vulnerable customers, even though the aim of these new solutions is to remove any friction, we also want to give them the opportunity to add friction if they need to. So, for example, I know Monzo has been coming up with a few ideas on how to do that. I know they were talking about maybe providing an option for some users, for example, with bipolar disorder, who tend to spend money late at night, to add an option that says, if I make any purchase after 10 p.m., send me a notification in the morning after asking me if I want to proceed with those payments, so that I have an option to say, no, actually, I shouldn't have done that, just cancel them. Or another option would be, for example, if I want to make a payment over, I don't know, £100, send a notification to my carer so they have to approve my expense. So again, it's all about providing alternatives and providing the option to add that friction back into the process. And finally, as we all know, always involve users as many as possible whenever you build a new solution or a new way of authentication, or any app or website in general. And that's all from me. Thank you very much.
Thanks for a great talk. I particularly like where you started from, the attitude that accessibility is being done because it's the right thing to do. So we've got some questions on the floor. Yes?
Just looking at this from a completely different perspective in your business, that when I was working with older people and what they did and then find that internet banking wasn't really good, it irritated them as all
maybe when you're browsing a website, that may be a more appropriate moment to get that additional information. But when you're in a store, you want to pay, or you're trying to log into your account, you probably don't want to get distracted by anything else. So I think it's a good thing. There is no room for much.
Yeah, it's just a question, I suppose. I may tie in a little bit of friction in terms of obviously you make payments, so that's very quick and so on. What about the kind of acknowledgement? So, because obviously if you don't get that acknowledgement, that can create anxiety. Did the payment go through and so on, and then wanted to check how much have I spent in that day, all those things. I know there's elements of more contact, but those can reduce, I suppose, the anxiety of the customer.
Yeah, definitely. No, I think that the confirmation needs to be involved in all of these solutions. So, for example, even if you use Siri payment, after the payment has been sent, Siri will confirm payment sent to John, £5. So you should always have that confirmation. And even if you're using something like Dine and Dash, if when you leave the shop you actually want to check, you have the app, you have the option. You can just check on your app, on your mobile, and see, okay, the payment's gone through. You may not care, you may not want that confirmation, but if you do want that confirmation, you have it on your app.
I suppose I also think just that payment plus also maybe the days or the weeks or however number of payments you've made, that it helps, I suppose, to you're in control as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, never take control away from the user. Yeah, definitely, I agree.
I have a question actually about the what's it called?
Dine and Dash
App.
And that came after Grab and Go.
Okay. Yeah. Perhaps I'm not a very trusting person, but one of the things I like to know in a restaurant is how much I'm going to pay before I authorise the payment, rather than just seeing afterwards that I've paid too much.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I was talking about, giving alternatives. Okay. So if you actually like to see how much you're going to spend and you actually want to check the bill before actually paying, then you're not going to use it, which is perfectly fine. And you're still going to use your credit card, which is okay. If you don't care, if you have lots of money and just want to enjoy your dinner and leave, then you can use it. It's all about alternatives and options.
I'm interested in knowing if you've tested that with users and what did they say about that point.
The Dine and Dash, because it's still being piloted, I mean, it has been piloted with users, with I think Barclays colleagues maybe, and I'm not testing it myself in that respect. So I'm waiting for the pilot to try to see all the feedback, and after that we definitely want to test it with customers with disability as well, to check if it's accessible. But yeah, it would be interesting to see once the pilot is done if they got any feedback around if people are happy to just leave and let the app pay, or if they want to check.
This is kind of wrapped up in an initial observation, but it was that all of the alternatives that you initially provided were ones that were not inherently accessibility alternatives, but instead were alternatives that could really help everyone, but could also help the user base. I was wondering kind of how intentional that was, because I think if you look at the older models of accessibility alternatives, they're very accessibility specific, like alt text or using ARIA, it's very much you design thing and then you add accessibility on top, whereas all the ones you listed were much more kind of open-ended, like targeted everyone. I was wondering how intentional that was.
Well, all of these solutions, I honestly don't think that someone sat down and start talking about accessibility. So I don't think that someone actually sat down and say, how can we create a solution that's accessible for our customers with disability? They all came up from the general question of how can we make our payment services easier and quicker to use for our customers. Accessibility wasn't the reason why someone decided to design these solutions. But then we jump in and say, hey, this is going to be great for accessibility. Can we work with you and make sure that your solution is accessible for our customers? So definitely, you're right, as in these are not solutions built for customers with a disability, but greatly help customers with a disability. So it's good for everybody.
There's one or two more questions?
Hi, I just wanted, with the biometric methods you talked about, have you found any of your customers have voiced concerns either around security and or privacy? And if so, how do you overcome those?
I don't receive complaints from customers. So someone else, some other team will deal with complaints from customers. So I don't know if we had. We may as well had. And again, I think that should not become the only way that customers should authenticate themselves. Again, I think that customers should be given a choice. Do you want to use your voice or do you want to use something else? Because, yeah, I understand some people may not feel comfortable using their voice.
We've done some research in authentication and we found that with things like Touch ID, if people are using it, they have no concerns. But people who haven't used it say, oh, someone will take it off my pint glass, or even facial ID. I don't think it can be done, actually. Even facial ID, with photographs, and people have read about that HSBC voice fraud or whatever going on. So people do seem to have concerns. But obviously, those who use it either don't have the concerns and we've got past them, or the convenience just outweighs it. But it does seem to be an issue.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think there will always be some customers that don't trust a specific solution or another solution, and that's why we should always give alternatives. I mean, my mom is a bit of an extreme case, but she always carries cash. She doesn't trust credit cards. She doesn't believe in credit cards. So, when I go now to some shops and they tell me, no, you can't pay by cash, you can only pay by card, I start getting a bit worried because I'm sure some people we always prefer paying by cash. So I think everybody should be given the choice of how to pay.
You have to have a fallback anyway, don't you?
Yeah, exactly.